Ahsoka episode 4 is actually pretty good. Episodes 1 through 3 had a lot of problems, and just a lot of stupid shit which was really overshadowing any good that could be found in them. But thankfully, that's not really the case in episode 4. This episode really gives the fans what they've been yearning for, and really makes me wonder why it took half the season to get to this quality. But even though this episode is pretty good, is it enough to really get this show on track to be something special? So right off the bat, I'm gonna come out and say that I think that episode 4 was clearly the best out of the 4 episodes so far. It was pretty much non-stop action from start to finish, which doesn't in of itself make it good. Mindless, never-ending action can really just make the action itself not feel that important because there's too much of it and no downtime in between. But I didn't really feel that with episode 4 because I felt like all the duels that we got in this episode were being built up by the first 3 episodes. And I will say that I really enjoyed all the lightsaber duels. But before I talk about each of those, I do have to talk about the bad stuff from episode 4, because even though this was my favorite of the season so far, it still has its issues. Now, episode 4 is the first episode that I didn't feel like had any extreme glaring issues, so it's got that going for it, but there's still some things I want to nitpick. So firstly, Hera decides to disobey orders and leave the fleet with the help of a couple X-Wing pilots to investigate what's going on over Cetos. And for some reason, she decides to bring her child. Why? I know you know that what you're going into has the potential to be dangerous. So you really want to bring your child into a potential war zone? That doesn't seem like great parenting to me. This dude's like 6. Just leave him behind. All you're doing is putting him in harm's way. The writers probably did this just so the audience wouldn't forget about him entirely, because he only has that one brief snippet in episode 3, but I think that it comes at the cost of the story making logical and ethical sense. So the next thing really has to do with the first 4 episodes in general, and that's that I don't really like Ahsoka's character so far. And I think that it more so has to do with the direction than Rosario Dawson herself. Her character thus far has been so bland, and I don't feel the spark like I have in the past. They made her way too stoic for my liking, and when she does speak her dialogue, it's for the most part pretty bad and just so slow and unimportant. And I know they can do better because I didn't get that sense from Rosario Dawson's Ahsoka when she appeared in Mando Season 2 and the Book of Boba Fett. And the final problem I'll highlight is this first half of the season did not need to be 4 episodes long. They easily could have condensed this down to 3 episodes, or even 2 if they really wanted. The problem is everything that's happened so far feels like setup to the main part of the story, which is supposed to be Thrawn's return to the galaxy and how the New Republic deals with the resurgence of the Empire. But it's taken us half of the season to get past it. Now, if this was a 16 episode season, it would be fine. If we look at the show in movie terms, everything that's happened thus far feels like the first act. And the first act is generally about the first quarter of a film. But episode 4 is pretty much a mid-season finale, and we're just now getting to the main conflict. They only have 4 episodes to do everything related to Thrawn being heir to the Empire, Ezra's possible return from the unknown, the brewing war that's about to happen between the Republic and the Empire, and I don't think they've given themselves realistically enough time to do all that without it feeling extremely rushed. Now, we could be getting a season 2 to Ahsoka sometime in the future, and we probably will, to be honest, but regardless, I think everything I've laid out really highlights some of the overarching pacing issues that this show possesses. Okay, now that I've gotten all the issues out of my system, let's talk about the stuff that I liked from this episode, and I actually liked quite a bit. Now, this episode is largely dominated by the 3 lightsaber fights that happen, so what I'm going to do is take a look at each of the fights individually from what I think is the worst to the best. Starting with our first fight, Shin vs. Sabine. Now, the fight in this episode between these 2 ladies I think is head and shoulders better than the one that we got in episode 1. The fight in that one felt corny, to be honest. The choreography was not very good, and I'm not sure if that was by intention so that the rematch here could feel like an upgrade. We also had one of the stupidest plot points I've seen in a while, but thankfully none of that is present here for the rematch. The fight here is fast-paced and is actually choreographed well. I also liked how we got to see a sort of Mandalorian and Jedi hybrid sort of fighting style from Sabine. This is also the only fight that doesn't have a winner, which sets up a seemingly third face-off between these 2 quite nicely. It was a well-done fight, and I don't really have any complaints about it. Next, we have the rematch between Ahsoka and Marok. Now, just like Shin and Sabine, I think that this rematch between Ahsoka and Marok is a step up from its predecessor. Now, I personally liked the first fight between them, although I know a lot of people didn't. Many people thought the choreography wasn't the greatest, but the main issue that they had was that Ahsoka just moved too slow, which is still a little bit of a problem problem in this fight. Rosario Dawson is a 44-year-old woman, so she's obviously not going to be able to move up to par of what is generally expected. So I do wish that they implemented a little bit of CGI just to give her movements that little bit of momentum, which was kind of missing. But the thing I really liked about this fight was just how good it looked. Not just choreography-wise, but cinematography-wise as well. This is the best shot out of the 3 fights, and some of these shots look absolutely gorgeous. It's also very obvious that all of these fights, but this one especially, was heavily inspired by the Kurosawa films. The way they pose and face off against each other gives it a very unique and interesting style. And this style really shines through in the shot where Ahsoka kills Marok in that Japanese-style face-off. It felt like it came straight out of an old samurai movie. And it also reminded me a lot of the Twin Sons episode in Rebels where Obi-Wan kills Darth Maul. I really like this stylistic choice and really like the fight overall as well. Which brings us to the final fight and best fight of the episode, which was Ahsoka vs. Baylan. This fight had you hooked during the build-up right from the get-go. Ray Stevenson as Baylan has such a screen presence, and I'm glad but also pissed that it took till episode 4 for them to finally let him do something significant. I think the thing I like the most about this fight is the clash of very different fighting styles. Ahsoka has a very smooth, sort of fluid style of fighting, but Baylan's style actually kind of reminds me a lot of Darth Vader. He has very hard and aggressive swings, and even though he isn't very fast, he's able to make up with it with his strength and imposing physical presence. I also think that it's very smart that they had Ahsoka lose this fight, because when these two have their seemingly inevitable rematch, it's going to feel a lot more triumphant and earned on Ahsoka's part because she lost the first one, which we just wouldn't feel if she won this first go-around. And this fight ends with Ahsoka possibly dying? She obviously isn't dead, but I say possibly because this leads into the ending scene and the major talking point of this episode, which is Ahsoka waking up in the world between worlds. Now, if you haven't seen Rebels and aren't familiar with the world between worlds, it first appeared at the end of season 4 of Rebels and is basically a force realm outside of space and time. And while in this realm, you are able to see things of important significance from the past, future, and present. And that's why in the last shot, Ahsoka comes face to face with her old master, Anakin Skywalker, and I'm extremely excited to see what becomes of this next week in episode 5. So overall, I'd say I was pretty satisfied with episode 4, coming off the back of episode 3, which I found extremely disappointing. Episode 4 ups the quality significantly and really has me optimistic for the second half of the season, because now we are getting into the main conflict of the story, and we can finally put all of the stretched out setup behind us. And the main question on my mind now, are they going to royally screw up Thrawn, or will he actually be portrayed well? I guess we're just going to have to wait and see. Well, that's gonna do it for this week's Ahsoka video, guys. If you made it this far and want to see more content like this, do me a favor by leaving a like and hitting that subscribe button. If you want to be notified when I post my video about Ahsoka Episode 5, hit the notification bell, because that won't be a video you want to miss. But anyways, that's all I got for today. I'll see you guys next time.